Your church may have a full calendar, a lot of events going on, long staff meetings, and be welcoming new people every Sunday. And yet money always finds a way to be a little too tight. And it's probably not because giving is low. Busy churches go broke all the time. Here's why. A busy church can face the temptation that activity equals sustainability, that the more events we hold equals more generosity. And simply put, churches should not be thinking this way. Activities do not equal sustainability. Attendance does not equal financial health. To put another way, laziness is not the biggest contributor for churches going broke. They go broke because they confuse movement with momentum. They think that doing more equals being more. So step one is to reframe the discussion. You need to shift the blame away from generosity and start to focus more on our systems. First, your events cost too much. In your ministry plan, you may have a pretty good idea of how much it takes to put on an event. This is how much money comes out of your pocket, and this is what accountants call direct costs. Think of direct costs as the amount spent on food or supplies or childcare even, or if you were to get thank you gifts for volunteers. These are direct costs. Think of direct costs as the pile of receipts that you turn in after the event. But that's only direct costs. Have you considered the hidden costs to put on these events? Many church leaders may not factor in the hidden cost of time that is required from its staff members to be put into the planning and execution of the events. Also, do your church leaders factor in the effort for these staff members and volunteers to put on these events? Because burnout becomes a real talking point as the events start to pile on. And what about the utility spikes during VBS week? And what about the background check costs for your volunteers? What about wear and tear on your facilities? What about the transaction fees if you're charging a ticket price for your events? And what about the unplanned expenses? We're talking same-day shipping for items that you forgot to order 2 weeks ago and you need it for the event that's happening this weekend. These are hidden costs. When you start to see your ministry's success in your churches by the number of events that are going on, it may start to feel that being busy equals being productive. But the more busy you are, creates more opportunities for leaks in your finances. Your events always cost more than you think. Secondly, and even before we get to the event itself, your church has budgeted on the means of hope rather than reality. What do I mean by that? Your budget has assumed the best case scenario for giving, but your expenses are fixed. Plain and simple. There's little margin for fluctuation. So what do you do if giving is down 10% year over year after the first 2 quarters? What do you do if the HVAC needs to be replaced all of a sudden? You hope it doesn't. You hope giving isn't down. You have budgeted on hope. But your budget should be a well thought out plan, not optimism in a spreadsheet. If giving is less than expected, many pastors correctly ask, why is giving less? But they should also be asking, why were we expecting more? Because maybe the dip in giving is not a generosity problem. Maybe there's an issue in how you're forecasting. So how does your church forecast giving? Does it just average out the 12 months from the prior year? Does it add 3% for cost of living? If your giving increased year over year last year, who's to say it increases at the same rate this year? Church leaders need to get better at forecasting next year's giving. And doing this at the budget phase means that you're being proactive rather than reactive. Shameless plug, we have a lot of free resources for pastors just like you to help with budgeting and forecasting, among many other things. Just shoot us an email. So lastly, how do we get there? It all starts with an understanding of where your money is going and why. Simply put, a financial report is not a budget, and receipts are not a ministry plan. So church leaders, take accountability for your church's spending, but do it after you take accountability for your church's vision. Church leaders are always pressured to saying yes and to doing more, but the finance team, all they're looking at is the numbers. They're not considering the vision. And most of what the leadership board looks at is results, not necessarily the plan. And as the saying goes, when everyone is responsible, no one is accountable. So therefore, church leader, you must be accountable, but not only for the numbers. You need to be accountable for the vision, the plan. So then the solution, therefore, isn't to demand more generosity or even to cut spending by a tremendous amount. And big picture, busy doesn't always mean healthy, but it can, with the right financial clarity. So subscribe if you want more tips and tricks on healthy financial clarity for churches and religious nonprofits rather than guilt-driven fundraising. Thanks.